Hello and welcome to week 5 in research methods, and we are at the point where we're talking about hypotheses. Now, building up until this point, we've been looking at the literature, we've been looking at what we already know, we're looking at how we define our variables, and then based on the definition of variables and the definition of what we already know, we can now draw educated guesses as to how we think a particular study is going to work out. So let's say we were talking about, I like to do these educational psychology ones. See, the amount of time you spend studying and grades. Now, the research that's out there is that the amount of time that you spend studying is, in fact, related to your grades, and it's a positive correlation. There's some factors that come into that, but in general, the amount of time you dedicate to studying will improve your grades. The truth is, it's actually a curvilinear relationship. While there is a straight correlation, straight positive correlation will start at the bottom, depending on how your scales are, but start at the bottom and go up. Both go up together and both go down together. But there is a point of diminished returns in the number of, you can study too much, where it plateaus, and then if you keep on studying, you actually start to forget. And aside from all that, how you study, if you're just rereading notes, you're not learning anything. If you are doing spaced practice, if you're interleaving your subjects together, you may not feel like you're getting to know, but you're actually learning better. If you're switching between subjects, you're switching between types of problems, switching between, what you're learning. And I kind of try to do that. It's not like a repeated measure, but in the testing that I do in my classes, kind of jump around the chapter a little bit. So you've read it, now you got to jump around a little bit, and maybe there's an assignment where you need to apply it. It's kind of the effort I make to have mixed practice for the content that I'm teaching, as well as some interleaving of different ideas. Now, back to hypothesis. Let's say we have that based on everything that we know. If I have a group that studies for 1 hour and I have a group that studies for 2 hours for a test, I would basically presume my hypothesis would be group 2 is going to score better on the test. That's essentially what we're looking at when we look at hypothesis development. The science and language of writing hypotheses is using that clear language. And you're going to be using your operational definitions. That's going to be an important part. So I might look at learning, and I might look at amount of studying as my general concept. But when I write my hypotheses, I'm going to say the group that studied for 1 hour will perform less effectively, if you want to phrase it that way, than the group that studied for 2 hours. Probably should reverse that. The group that studied for 2 hours will perform better on the test than the group that only studied for 1 hour. That would be my hypothesis. I'm not referring to time nor learning. I'm saying they're going to do better on the test. The discussion is then to take that test as my operational definition and call it learning. But you don't just say they will learn more. They're going to score higher on the test. That's what I'm going to measure. I'm going to measure how much time, and I'm going to measure how much their score is on the test. Again, in the philosophy of psychology, we assume first that nothing is going on. So we have this test, we have this hypothesis. It's basically the alternate hypothesis that something is going on, so we need another hypothesis that states our assumptions that nothing is going on, and that's called the null hypothesis, where you say the same thing, but you say it like this. You say, the amount of time the group study will have no effect on the test scores. Nothing going on. That's the null hypothesis. It's not those who study more will score lower. That's not, you can have that as another hypothesis. You would have a two-tailed test at that point. One hypothesis is saying it's going to be higher. One hypothesis says it's going to be lower. And the null hypothesis, nothing is going on. That's pretty rare. Usually we are predicting a relationship between the two variables, and the null hypothesis says no relationship. So when you're writing these out, that's how they manifest. Now, we have a discussion, a quiz, and then our next special assignment. Now, the discussion is having you just kind of look at the reality and discuss that this stuff is difficult to read. It is. As it just so happens that as I'm teaching this class, I'm rewriting the curriculum for the psychology seminar. And I have a little chapter called Reading, Writing, and Arithmetic. And the reading part is reading an article. And I kind of go on about this is difficult stuff to read. And so getting that early in the program, we understand it's difficult to read the literature. You have to kind of get your head wrapped around that professional language. Now, the chapter quiz has you critical thinking. Think about why is it important that we know what we already know? Why do we have to do that background reading? Has something to do with the hypotheses. And then the idea of the one-tailed versus two-tailed test. Now, I have a little graphic for you here. This comes from the statistics book. And what it shows is the application of significance testing on a standard curve. And we're looking at making a decision. I hope this is familiar. So making a decision based on the 0.05 condition of significance. When we are looking, let me do this. Lectures as a tool for teaching. Some might say that lecturing will improve grades. The person who's lecturing, particularly if they're a good public speaker, will be able to talk about ideas, will be able to exemplify critical thinking, hopefully get into some didactic interaction with the class, get some examples, help people build the process of thinking and connecting what we're learning to personal experience. They can do that. Other people might think lectures are boring. It's just one person's opinion. It's not interactive. It's not interactive with other learners. It's kind of just a one-way communication kind of thing. There might be a supposed conclusion that you'll get lower grades if it's lecture-based. So in that kind of question, we might be open to a hypothesis that says the presence of lectures may actually increase grades or it might decrease grades. And if we're open to that, we're looking at a two-tailed test. Medications is another one. Medications, when we put a medication out there and we're testing its results, we are totally open to a positive effect, but we have to be open to a negative effect. We have to make sure that the negative effects don't outweigh the positive effects. So you get these two-tailed tests, okay? Other areas, let's say I'm looking at the 1 hour, 2 hour, I'm not really interested if there's going to be any lowering of grades. I might just stick to the one-tailed test. I'm just interested to see if more time actually increases grades. Not interested in researching whether it's going to lower grades. It probably won't. Now, one of the reasons why we want to make a distinction between one-tailed and two-tailed is because one-tailed tests, it is easier to get a significant result than a two-tailed test. Now, this goes back to your statistics. So if we look at that graph, we'll see that if we're going to have the decision point being 0.05, you'll look on the left, the one-tailed test, as long as you can see these are T-scores, right? As long as you're, no, these are F scores. One of those, having a little brain cramp right there. If you have a score of 1.645 or above, in terms of your Z-scores. That's what they are. I'm really sorry about it. Z-scores are they're measures of standard deviation. Go back and look at it. In order for your value to be significant, it has to be 1.645 standard deviations or higher from the mean for it to be significant. Look on the other side. It has to be 1.96. If you're taking into account that it could go bad, could go the other way, then you are taking that 0.05 level and you're dividing it between two. So it's harder for something to be low enough going to the left to be significant or high enough to the left if you're using a two-tailed test. So these are some of the decisions we make as researchers. You're going to be looking at your study and you're going to be thinking, am I open to this going either way? Might it make things worse? Might it make things better? Might it go this way or that way? And if that's the case, you might be looking at a two-tailed test. Again, depending on the nature of your statistics, which will be coming up when we start doing the methods section. For now, the special assignment has to do with you writing your hypotheses. Now remember, we have the title page and we have the references page. The single page in the middle of those is just a statement of your alternate hypothesis. That's the way you think things are going to go in relation to your operational definitions for your variables. And then your null hypothesis, nothing going on, no relationships at all. Be sure to write these very clear, and the actual phrasing of the null and alternative hypothesis should be very similar so that they match. You don't want them talking about different things. You want them talking specifically about the same things, like the example that I used and the examples that are in the course. But please make yourself available to look at those to see how those are written. It's all you need to write in that middle page is you identify them, of course, as the alternate hypothesis and the null hypothesis, and you write them out. That's the place that we're at. The next place that we're going to go will be how do we build from that point on to put your study together. But this is predicting largely for those of you who are doing direct copies. You're reproducing another, you're replicating another work. What did they get? That's probably where you need to go because the evidence that's already there is pointing in that direction. You're not going to be significantly changing the study in any way, and you could probably go ahead with their same hypothesis put into your words that describe your study. Those of you that are mucking around a little bit, got to think about it a little bit. What do you think's going to happen when you do that? There's a couple of you that are actually right now, I believe you're doing something very independent of a replication study, almost an original study, and that you're going to have to think about based on what you've read so far, where do you think things are going to go to get this assignment done? So I am pleased that everybody is now engaged in the class and doing stuff. I have reached out, touched base with people. We're all good. We're all together. There's some work that people need to do. All of you have things to do. This is great. We're in process. I know it's stressful. I get it. We'll make it. This is great. In my final announcement, as I'm going to be posting a link in the announcements, and that is I am running an independent study of this class for a student from last semester. That individual has just published their survey, and I want you all to participate. I can't verify that because the study is actually anonymous. I'm just asking you to do that. But this is one of your peers who's a little bit ahead, and you're going to see what she did. She created a survey. She's asking the questions. You see how it comes together with the introduction, with the consent, all of that. She did a great job. We actually worked together today on that, and it's all ready to go. She's very relieved. We're going to be collecting data for a couple weeks, and then she's going to be finishing up the class. So she's little preview for what you should expect when you get to that stage in a little bit in this semester. So get this all done. We have, like I said, the discussion, the quiz, and we have the special assignment, writing up your hypotheses. They're not huge assignments at this point. So keep up. Looking forward to those work coming in. I will be checking on things that have been submitted over the weekend. I was away for the week, and I will get caught up on that grading. All right. So I will see you folks soon, and have a great week.